get out more. We need to stop sometimes and look at the sky. We need to spend more time with the ones we love and forget the ones we don't. So many things can make you forget what's important in life. They will use fear on us, and if you believe them and let them in, it will bring you down, will make you get in line and shut up. Well, we don't want to get in line, we want to show them all the sky and let them figure it out for themselves. We are talking to you. Yes, you. Sat in your car. Sat at home, walking along the street. That thing you want. That thing that feels 100 miles away. It's yours. It always has been. All you have to do is go and get it with starry eyes and butterflies.
Ripple Puddle is a weaving of true stories that connect us in the human experience. Each episode gains at giving our audience new insight into themselves and others around them. Using philosophy, history, art, the sciences, and music, we guide our listener to access their playfulness, emotional intelligence, connectivity, and the desire to discover. We are the ripples in this big puddle, and we are connected by our stories. When your soul makes a noise, what does it sound like? Here's mine.
I'm Carla Taylor, and you're listening to episode 10, Sound Imprint.
It's pretty easy to recognize genuine creative expression. It has its own unique resonance. It feels uncontained, unsuppressible. It seems to follow its own current. Oh, and it leaves behind an echo. There's a mysterious and inherent quality hidden in great art, and this invisible substance is what makes these words affect us as deeply as they do. Sound relies on transmitter and receiver to validify existence, and music is the most powerful transmitter of all. Music tells us things, social things, psychological things, physical things, about how we feel and perceive our bodies, in a way that no other art form can quite nail. It's sometimes in the words, but just as often the content comes from a combination of sounds, rhythms, and vocal textures that communicate in ways that bypass the reasoning centers of the brain and go straight to our emotions. Music, in whatever form, tells us how others view the world. People we've never met, sometimes people who are no longer alive. Music embodies the way those people thought and felt, what their experiences were, what their consciousness transcribed. We enter into new worlds, their worlds. The inexpressible depth of music, Schopenhauer wrote, so easy to understand and yet so inexplicable, is due to the fact that it reproduces all the emotions in our innermost being, but entirely without reality and remote from its pain. Music expresses only the quintessence of life and of its events, never these themselves. Everyone has had a song transport them to a vivid memory of an early romance or some other formative experience. Songs are like smells that way. They bring up worlds, very specific places and moments. Other sounds do this too. Intense rain, a car horn, a distant train. What I love most about music is that we encounter it at specific times and places. It happens, we sense it, and then it's gone. It seemingly disappears but leaves behind a feeling that can be recalled by just hearing the song over again. Our sonic memory is there to capture ringtones, dog growls, and ambulance sirens, as well as also snippets of songs. When we remember a melody, it plays in our mind. It becomes newly alive. There's not a process of recalling, imagining, assembling, recategorizing, recreating, as when one attempts to reconstruct or remember an event or a scene from the past. Sociologist H. Stith Bennett claims that over time we've developed what he calls recorded consciousness, which means we internalize how the world sounds based on how recordings sound. The part of our brain that deals with hearing acts as a filter, and because of our exposure to recorded sound, we simply don't hear things that don't fit that sonic template. So to make your own sound, well, that just takes courage. We all know how weird it is to hear your own recorded voice. The discomforting aspect of this phenomena is often attributed to the fact that we hear ourselves, our voices, through the vibrations in our skulls, as well as through our ears, and recordings can't capture those skull vibrations. Much of what we hear is partly defined and limited by the mechanics of our ears. We know that we can't hear all the high-pitched sounds that bats emit or the full range of sounds that a dog can hear, but there are things we hear that have nothing to do with the physics of the eardrum and the auditory canal. Sounds can help you find yourself too, find your purpose, spirituality, and eventually lead you back to a newer, broader version of yourself. Here's Kate Priestley of KP and the Boom Boom with her story.
I was washing my hands. I just walked out of the bathroom and I felt like somebody over my shoulder staring at me, and he was like, "Can you sing?" And I was like, he's like, you look like a singer. And so I said, well, I like to sing. So he said, okay, I'm a music teacher. Come by my shop at 4 p.m. and you're going to sing to tabla. I was like, well, can you tell me what to sing so I can learn the lyrics and stuff? And he was like, no, just whatever comes out, that's what you're going to sing. I was a little nervous, kind of confused as well, because it was just a really strange meeting and I didn't know who this guy was. But I went at 4 p.m. and he had a music shop where he teach students, some Indian, some international. He just started playing tabla, and at first I felt really awkward. He asked me to start singing, and then I think it was 30-40 minutes later I looked at the clock and realized that I'd just been singing non-stop for that whole time, something I'd been channeling something, and it just came out really naturally. It was a great idea to go to India just because of the culture and, the music and the colors. And when I arrived there, I was traveling by myself, and I remember having the biggest shock of my life. I arrived in the airport terminal. I remember walking out towards the taxis and the tuk-tuks, and there was a shuddering cow in the airport terminal and somebody laying on the ground that looked like, they were half dead. I had no idea everybody's walking over them. I just was not prepared, and I remember walking out and just being accosted by maybe over 50, 60 men just wanting to grab my bag and take me to where I needed to be in Delhi. Everybody's hustling there. On the drive to the guest house that I'd booked, I was going to kind of wing my way around India. I was there for 9 months, but the first few nights I'd booked what I thought was a nice guest kind of hotel. When we arrived there, it was on a dirt track, and the sewers were open, the smells were really intense, and the taxi driver's like, Madame, we have arrived. I got into my room, closed all the curtains, and I thought, I need to sleep right now. I can't handle what is going on right now. I'm in total shock, and I'm by myself. I woke up after a few hours, and I remember my head just opening the curtains, peering out like I'm a little kid, looking down to the streets and seeing the incense burning and food carts. That was my first. I decided to go out, and I think I definitely looked like a rookie. You try to give some money and help and buy food for people, but still that's not enough to help, the whole country there and the whole country's problems. And that's a very hard thing to accept when you're there. It took me about 6 weeks to acclimate. In the fifth or sixth week, I had my rucksack stolen with everything in it. I'm saying everything. I had this tiny little day bag that did have my passport in and did have, some of my bank cards and stuff. So that important stuff that I still needed, I had with me, but my clothes, I have asthma, my inhalers and my professional camera, everything got stolen. And that train journey was from Delhi to Varanasi. And Varanasi is like very holy. It's the oldest city in India, and it's right on the Ganges. It's like towards the end of the Ganges, but it's where all the steps are going into the Ghats and where the burning Ghats are as well. So I was going to have that experience, and I fell asleep and went past, I think it was Lucknow, which was another big city, the next big city on the stop to Varanasi. And I must have fallen asleep for like an hour, 2 hours. And when I woke up, my whole bag had gone. You know, obviously the first feeling is panic and like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like I'm in this foreign country, like all of my belongings have gone. And I just sat there. Everyone had gone on the whole train. Like there was hardly anyone left. And it's a sleeper train because it's a 12-hour journey. So I was asleep on my particular bed and my bag was underneath. So I sat there and I thought, you know what? They probably needed that more than I did. I felt like in England, if my bag had been stolen or something, the way I'd have handled it, it'd have been such a big deal. But in India, you see the poverty around you. You remain humble. There's something that happens there that, you know, makes you reflect differently about life and what important things are. And I thought, Kate, these are just material things. Like, it sucks that your bag's stolen, but that's what they needed more than you did. And I had that mindset and really remained calm. I felt that was like my first really big test in India. And I remember walking down the train and I found a couple from Israel still on the train. They were still going to Varanasi, and I said, can I sit with you? I've had my bag stolen and I don't really want to be by myself for like the rest of the journey, which I think was like 8 more hours. And they were like, of course. So they sat with me and kept me company, and the train pulled in really late at night into Varanasi. And I remember walking off that train platform with just this tiny little bag, and I'm in this foreign country all by myself. I actually just felt really free. Maybe it was a feeling of being a little scared too, but the overall feeling was like just this freedom of just me being by myself and out on the road traveling. And I felt like the baggage that I had been previously carrying was kind of just weighing me down, you know. That was probably like a metaphor for all the things that I felt that I needed. I just never forget that feeling of freedom, having that experience of not really having any belongings, like just the clothes that I was wearing in India. And that was a big learning experience for me too. I never forget that. I feel like I really blossomed from being a girl into a woman for sure, and the spiritual growth that I had in that country has definitely stayed with me. Before I even went to India, that was not even a word that I would even talk about. What is spirituality? And after I left there, it was like an everyday conversation there about your energy and what you put out to the world and the cause and effects of karma and your actions on the world. I definitely think that my spirit and who I am grew and blossomed, and I think that is still with me from that time in India.
All of our experiences are unique to our personal filters. Hand in hand we walk, leaving ripples of our expression. It's the place where we find our meaning that allows for interconnectedness, because true expression are undeniably resounding. There's a famous quote by Paulo Coelho that goes, "When you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you achieve it. It takes wins, losses, support, timing, and then just a little bit of courage." Here's Ben Sina with his story.
The first song I ever wrote was about 2 weeks after I started playing guitar, and I had learned a couple of new chords, and I was sitting in the living room and my mom came in and she was going to bed and she was saying goodnight, and I just like strummed this chord and I started to sing this song, and I just made it up on the spot, and it was called Good Night Mother. And a really simple, silly thing just kind of stuck with me. Good night, mother, sleep tight, mother, don't let the bed and bugs bite, mother, good night. And that was it. getting ready for 5th grade, I remember you got to pick if you wanted to do band or choir, and I chose choir because all the cute girls were in choir. We had a concert that we were doing, and the teacher was holding auditions for solos after class. I didn't want to go because I wasn't really interested in it. Before class ended, she read a list and she said, if you're on this list, then I want you to come even if you weren't going to do it. I'm just suggesting that you come because I think you could do well. My name was on the list, so I decided to go to the auditions. I ended up getting both of the solos, which was, basically kind of like a clean sweep. That's kind of what brought me into at least, being interested in music, knowing that I was good enough to kind of be in there with everybody else. My parents got divorced for a brief time when I was in 8th grade for like a year. And during that time, my mom bought me a guitar. The whole reasoning behind it was that my youth minister at the time at church had asked me if I would start playing to kind of take over the praise band after the guy. I think he was a senior in high school, so he was going to leave. So he wanted someone to replace him. So that's kind of how I initially got into music. And I remember I went my first year at A&M. I met these 2 guys, and I had gone up over the winter after my first semester and recorded these 3 little songs at a studio with this guy, and he kind of helped me produce the music. This is kind of really where I decided I think that music was so important to me that I wanted to explore it further and see, if it could be something that I could spend my life doing. I remember just getting like a great response from everybody that I knew in high school, and I remember hearing from someone and they said, "Did you write that song about me?" And I said, "No, I didn't." And they said, "Well, every time I hear that song, it feels like it's about me." And that's kind of when I realized, I think like in that precise moment, that's why I love music so much. And that's why I always thought it was so powerful. I'd never really been able to put words to it. Knowing that, you hear a song, you're in a certain place in your life and you hear some words that are comforting or just kind of remind you that you're not alone in your situation and how powerful that is to other people. I feel like music is always more powerful as something that will lift you up as opposed to kind of, remind you like things are dark. I decided to leave A&M to go to UNT and pursue music. I got into the music school there. Just started to learn all about how to compose music and theory and writing and being around a lot of great musicians. It's a really top flight school. And after that, I still didn't really even know that I could do music as a career. And I started grad school for counseling. Maybe like after a semester, I signed a deal with an indie label in San Antonio with a producer. I had started coming back and forth to do work in San Antonio, and it wasn't going fast enough. That's when I decided I'm going to quit grad school and move to Austin and just jump into it and see if I can make music work. I don't know like what specific day it was, when I woke up and decided, but I just remember thinking, I don't want to be an old man and look back at my life and just say I never made that decision to try that because I was too scared or too afraid. I honestly just didn't want to live with that regret. I just remember we got into town and we knew one of the bartenders at Chupacabra on 6th Street, and he knew that we were musicians, me and my drummer, and he said, "Why don't y'all come play Sunday night?" And this was like maybe a week or 2 after we had moved to Austin. And so we went and played our first gig on 6th Street Sunday night from 10 to 2 in the morning for $80. Somebody else saw us play down there, and they were kind of connected with one of the other bars. We just started getting gigs, and I was lining up interviews for these teaching jobs. And I remember we had played like a week or 2. I came home really late one night, and I had my interview the next day. And I was just like, I made enough, like I can pay my rent. I'll just skip that interview and just see how this is gonna go. And honestly, it all just kind of happened naturally. There wasn't too much fear or even need for me to be brave or overly excited. It's not really about making money or being famous. It's just kind of about finding a way to help people and be involved in other people's lives and feel that like synergy and that energy that comes from other people around you and being involved with what you do. Like sometimes stuff just falls into place, and then there's just these moments in between where you're just kind of waiting. In those moments in between, it's like really important to be working and growing and getting better at what you do, so that when you have those like moments where stuff starts to happen, you're really ready to kind of jump in and be effective at what you do.
It's something falling in love with you, 'cause a love with you lasts till the end of time. Ain't it something?
One of my favorite things to do is to walk through the market with my headphones on, listening to my new favorite playlist. It seems almost dismissive, but really listening to music is an intensely active process involving a stream of inferences, hypotheses, expectations, anticipation, and it happens mostly on a subconscious level. We carry our soundtrack with us wherever we go, and the world around us is overlaid with our music. Our whole life becomes a movie, and we can alter the soundtrack. Every melody declares to us that the past can be there without being remembered, the future without being foreknown. There's a tendency in philosophy to separate the mind, the intellectual operations, from passions and emotions. The neuroscience of music in particular has concentrated almost exclusively on the neural mechanisms by which we perceive pitch, tonal intervals, melody, rhythm. But music calls to both parts of our nature. It is in its essence emotional, just as it is intellectual. If you're a sound engineer who's also a drummer, you get to truly experience the best of both worlds. Here's Lynn Gathright with his story.
When I am mixing, part of my style of mixing is it's like a picture. Number one, you're painting a picture. As a sound engineer, one of my main things that I do whenever I'm mixing for a band on stage or even recording is vocals. Vocals are the one thing that everybody wants to hear whenever you go see a band. Is you got to have the vocals. When you hear yourself in your wedge or your monitor that way, and you can hear the low end that you're singing, gosh, it gives you confidence when you sing. It gives you to where whoever wrote the song, if it's that person that wrote it that's singing or somebody else, they're going, yeah, that's what it's supposed to sound like. When they were sitting there with their guitar and they were sitting there in the room, they can feel the resonance in their voice. And so that's why I always keep vocals way out front. I'm trying to distinguish frequencies that are coming off the stage to me and then make those frequencies sound good around all the other ambient noise that's happening in the room. When I left Texas and moved to Tennessee, I knew I could do something in Nashville. I knew that I could get work. But when I got there and then I worked my way into the record labels and to the artists and to the scene, basically, I was always a sound engineer, but I'm a musician as well. Not one time in 12 years did I get to play drums while I was in Nashville. Not one time. And I was just like going, golly, I'm a drummer, you know? But I want to play because I see these guys, these artists that are on stage and they get to do what they do. And then when they take it for granted, I'm going, no, don't ever take that for granted because you're getting a chance to do it. You're on big stages with thousands of people and stuff like that. And I'm out front and I'm mixing it, but I know what it's like to be on the other side. I know what it's like to be on a stage and be looked at and be appreciated for your musical talent. I played on tin cans. I had my mom's sewing can, and that's what I've used as my drum. I knew I had an ability to play drums, and that side of me that I didn't get to do, like I said, for 12 years, I thought I had lost. I was in Kentucky. I was with an artist. She had one hit, and I was a road manager. I'd go to the record label. They'd give me all the money that I'd have to pay the band members for their per diem and all that kind of stuff. But we went to a job in Kentucky, and the next day we were doing a show in Boston with Kenny Chesney. But I was there in this one huge stadium, and I got to do sound, and it was like 20,000 people, and I did our set, and then Brad Paisley was the headliner. We were the opener, and he was the headliner. So I walked out while Paisley was getting ready to go, and I walked out to the middle of the baseball field. Nobody was out there. It was all dark, and all the people were in the stands. I was just standing there just going, wow, I get to do this. Wow, and there's Joe Galani from RCA Music, and all these big wigs were around, and I got to meet them. And this was just an artist that was a pickup gig that they'd said, well, can you go out for this weekend with this artist? I go, yeah, but then I got to do that. I called my wife up, I was crying. I was standing out in the middle of the field and I was crying. I was going, I cannot believe I'm getting to do this. Those are the little things the little gifts that you get during your life that you just like, wow, thank you. When I get up every morning now and being able to go to some practices and actually be able to do that as well as being able to do sound engineering, I'm just blessed. I have the best of both worlds at this point. As soon as I get to play out live again, it'll be even better than that.
In Immanuel Kant said, "Now I say the beautiful is the symbol of the morally good, and that is only in this respect that it gives pleasure. The mind is made conscious of a certain ennoblement and elevation above the mere sensibility to pleasure." So according to Kant, the reason we find a given work of art beautiful is because we sense that some innate, benevolent, moral essence is tucked in there, elevating us, and we like that. In a homogenized world where we're encouraged to say the right thing, hold the same beliefs, jargon, views, remember to just listen to your deepest voice. Entrenched in the sound of others, it's hard to hear your own truth. There are opinions to be had, music to be made, sounds to produce. So please go out there and do it, because, we'll all be dead soon anyway. You've just heard Kate Priestley, Ben Cena, and Lynn Gathright. Special thanks to Lauren Bucari, David Taylor, Norton Armour, Drew Davis, and the Van Zant Hotel in Austin, Texas. The music you heard in this episode was performed by Kate Priestley, KP and the Boom Boom, Ben Cena, and Drew Davis. If you're in Austin, Texas for South by Southwest, see them live at Geraldine's during their residency in the month of March. Drew Davis, Monday night, Kate Priestley on Tuesday, and Ben Cena on Wednesday night. We highly recommend. If you'd like to learn more about the music used in this episode, visit our website at www.ripplepuddle.com. Most of the research material was sourced from the World Wide Web, as well as David Byrne's book, How Music Works, Incognito by David Eagleman, and Musicophilia by Oliver Sacks. Ripple Puddle is produced by Carla Taylor with co-production by Marielle Quaid. Theme music by Stephanie Hafer. If you'd like to pitch a story, email us at ripplepuddle@gmail.com or leave a message on our tip line 512-489-6786. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for our next episode coming out in just a few weeks.